let's talk about a real company now. ASML. ASML released its earnings today, this morning, and didn't look good. Revenue was down 10%. Sales growth will be down 10% in the year. Any initial reactions from you guys, or do you want to read out a few more numbers? Because I don't actually have them in front of me. I thought I did.
I've got the numbers if you want. So revenue was 5.43 billion. So that was actually at the higher end of their guidance. The sales growth was from their actual next quarter guidance, but gross margin was 49.1%. That was the lower end of the guidance. Op margin of 30.4. I mean, Steve, that's software margins, isn't it? EUV units, I've got it down as being 12. Paul, you've got it down as 15. One of us is right. And third quarter 2022 guidance, they were saying 5.1 to 5.4 billion. That implies sales growth of 10% rather than 20%. The market initially reacted fairly poorly to this, but I think it's sort of evened itself out. What's fast shipping,
this is
Paul?
the important part, isn't it? And this is why I bought on the opening. It dropped a couple of percent, didn't it, or something like that? And I went, I think the market's missed something here. And I didn't put loads in. I only put about 200 quid in or something. But it was fairly obvious at that point that the market had seen the numbers and not realised what the numbers actually meant. So fast shipping would be the ASML have been struggling to get the machines out quick enough. So what they've decided that rather than doing the tests in-house and keeping them for an extra 6 months, they would ship them out to the user, and then they would eventually just kind of tease out the problems while they're at service. This has meant that the end user, the customer, has had a little bit of time to have a bit of a play with the system and see if it works until they fully accept it, which means that they don't take any money until that customer has fully accepted the EUV machine, which means what? There's revenue coming next year, and that's the important part, and that's what the market missed in that initial bit of panic, and that is the reason why I'm now 5% up on ASML today. I think I bought in about like 496 today, and last time I checked, it's like 515. I was like, oh, you did some good old work there, Mr. Guy. I saw it coming, and I thought, this is good. But the earnings call was even better. You got any more you wanted to say on that?
Well, I was just going to say it's an important thing because I think there's around 100,000 components in their lithography machine. So there's going to be something that breaks. There's going to be something that probably doesn't arrive in the sort of shape that it was originally sent out in. So testing on site and testing in the foundry, I don't think that makes a massive difference. ASML has a lot of boots on the ground anyway, running around engineering. So this isn't a problem for any of our margins. They've already said that they think the margins are going to improve. I was looking at Goldman Sachs's model before I came on, and they're still modelling for 50% increase in revenue over the next, I think it was by 2024 to 25 year. So ASML is going to be a much bigger company by then anyway. But I thought it was an interesting report. I've skim read it. I don't tend to read too much into ASML's reports because it's a very sort of steady company, really.
It's one of those ones where it's like a Microsoft, right? 5 years ago, where you kind of go, it's just going to keep doing. I think unless something really big comes out to really ruin our lives, ASML is still going to be a component in my brain that keeps the world running. They've been talking to their customers a little bit, who still seem to want to buy things, but they said that automotive parts, which is really, really, really big part of it, because they can use these machines to just churn out really like quite low quality, if that's how you want to look at it, quite low quality chips to go into cars and just keep them trundling along. But they said they might see a slowdown in phones and laptops, which was quite a bit of an issue. Is that because of inflation and because they think that people are going to hold on to their phones and their laptops a little bit longer? I haven't got as much money right now, so maybe I won't upgrade as quick as possible, as quick as I usually do, and that could have an effect on obviously designers and foundries, and then that may have an effect on ASML. ASML doesn't think that's going to affect it, by the way, because they've still got a 100% run rate on their orders, which is absolutely crazy. This is the reason why we're invested in ASML. But that's the worry. The worry is they are loosely related to semiconductor design and foundries. If that slows down, then maybe their orders will slow down. I think that ASML is largely insulated from that.
I was trying to figure out what I think the main risk of this company are. I'm the only one who doesn't own it yet because I don't currently back, or at least until, I don't know, about 5 hours ago when I started trying to do the research for this thing, I didn't particularly back my understanding of this enough to understand what its moat looks like, because I tried to learn about DUVs and EUVs and various other things, and it seems like quite a complicated process. It's hard to understand. I'm happy to take it on faith for the moment that the big disrupting thing won't be some other company comes out with a better way of designing or building machines for writing on chips than ASML. I'm okay with the idea that moat's basically impenetrable for the moment. So something like Nikon and Canon and the other would-be competitors are in the dust. Fine. That leads me to wonder about something like the story I keep hearing about the US complaining about exporting these machines to China. And the reason that worries me fairly obviously for ASML, just for the people who are back at my kind of level of research on this, ASML only has about 5 customers because these machines cost so damn much. And their customers, I think, are Micron, Samsung, SK Hynix, Intel, and Taiwan Semi. And if you say you can't export these to China or Far East generally, that looks to me like it might take away a fair bit of ASML's market. And I don't see Intel picking up that slack because these machines are too expensive, basically. So I'm interested in your thoughts on the likelihood of that happening, because it's the main thing that, or the only thing that I can really see slowing down ASML's business here.
Well, the answer to that is that basically in America they're currently trying to move fabrication out there. So you're going to have Intel. Intel have already got orders in for the high NA EUV machines, which aren't even released yet. And then there's Global Foundries as well, which I don't think you mentioned on your customer report. And there's also TSMC. They're building in Arizona, I believe. They're building an absolutely massive facility, probably bigger than Intel's as well. So there's still a lot of demand for this kind of thing. I don't think China's a massive problem. ASML has never been able to send its top-end technology to China. It's always been a generation or two behind, just because of previous chips. The technology is actually somewhat American if you look back at the history of it, but it was like co-developed, and then for somehow managed to find its way into a tiny town in the Netherlands. So I don't think China's a massive problem. I think China is a couple of generations behind. I don't think I have any issues with the strengthening on the lack of selling to China. I think other places will pick up. I think people's most common issue with ASML is the sort of common issue that they see with Taiwan Semiconductors, is that there's always that threat of China war, or China trying to reclaim Taiwan. That would be a decent hit onto ASML's business, because, as you know, Taiwan Semiconductors is a big customer of ASML's. But generally speaking, Intel wants to be a fabricator. Intel wants to be more of a fabricator. Wants to fabricate higher quality chips. The only place they can go, and it literally is the only place they can go for this machine.
They also own part of ASML, right?
Everybody does.
They did own a massive part of
everybody
ASML,
owns a
but
little
they
bit.
sold
They all
it.
got together and sort of created this.
They did it at one point. Intel owned nearly 30% of ASML, and they got rid of it way ago, like 20 billion. So that kind of market cap, they shipped off quite a bit of it.
Insulation to China is the same reason for the risk to ASML. So the first one, which is really easy off the top of it, is inspection equipment. Inspection equipment isn't as hard to replicate, and it's partly why I own KLA as well, because KLA is ASML's nearest customer. And I have to get KLA in there because that's where it is. But the reason, I think, even if some replicator in China did get a hold of one of the top generation machines, it would take a hell of a lot of time to replicate it. By the time that they would replicate that, ASML would already be on the next stage. And it also they would also require a lot of parts that are made in-house, and also a lot of parts that can only be made by certain company. Carl Zeiss is what sticks out in my mind. There's nowhere in China that can make optics as good as Carl Zeiss right now. But that's also a bad thing for ASML in the same way. So while that would be a very good insulator against China, Carl Zeiss might also look at those gross margins and go, hold on, you've got a lot of spare money there. Maybe we can raise our prices a little bit. And that's going to be a big problem. So all of these companies, because they do make some other parts in-house, but a lot of it does come out from other places like that. And margin squeezing based on other companies wanting a bite of the pie might be a problem.
They're actually further insulated from that because they own optics division of Carl Zeiss, and they also own quite a lot of their supply chain. They're quite vertically integrated, and where they're not vertically integrated, they actually own parts of the companies that they deal with, just in order to get a consistent supply. I mean, when you're talking about needing 100,000 parts to make one of these machines, and they're shipping like 9 or 10 huge shipping containers. When they're fully assembled, they're about the size of a double-decker bus. So these things are big units, and if you're a manufacturer and you're getting 100,000 units, 100,000 different parts in to build your double-decker bus, you're going to want to have really, really good control over your supply chain. So yeah, you could make one of these. You could replicate this. You could get the machine and you could replicate it. But what you couldn't replicate overnight is the supply chain. And that's ASML's biggest moat, and it's sort of hidden in the background, is that, these machines, somebody could reverse engineer. If you're a smart enough guy, you could reverse engineer what these machines are doing. What you couldn't reverse engineer is the scale and the supply chain. And I just think that's protected for at least a decade.
I think Morningstar would probably put 30 years on that as a wide moat. Morningstar has a very specific. Wide moat means no disruption within 30 years, and then narrow moat means 10 years, basically, which is quite to have a wide moat rating is absolutely incredible. That's touched ASML. The only downside with buying it right now is valuation, right? I don't know what the PE ratio is on it right now, but I imagine it's high.
32-ish.
I just think it's always going to be high. I think ASML is just going to be one of those companies right now that is always going to be high. This is the Johnson & Johnson of the semiconductor world.
I'm surprised you didn't mention the big change.
Even I know what the big change is, and I don't own it. They're now going to start paying dividends quarterly. I think that's what you mean, Steve.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. They've,
that's it.
They changed the dividend round. Have they frozen it?
I don't know what they've done to it. I just know it's now coming quarterly rather than half yearly, which was revealed to me on Twitter, because I thought they were already paying it quarterly. I had no idea it was half yearly. I just never paid attention to this.
It did, and it had the cash flow to do it, so I didn't know how often it came. But yeah, that was a big surprise to me. I saw something, I think it was on Dividend Shots on Instagram that told me that, but I thought the news wasn't like all singing and dancing, so I thought there was some negative news in there. So it must have been that it was going to quarterly. There you go. What a big deal.